Hey guys, welcome to Animation Movies Recapped. This is David with you. Today I am going to recap a 2010 animated film called A Turtle's Tale, Sammy's Adventures. There are heavy spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film opens in 2009, where Sammy and Ray are at a beach in Baja California, getting ready for the hatching of their first grandchildren. Sammy tells the viewers about himself being best friends with Ray, and that they were born on the very same beach 50 years ago, while he's waiting for the grandchildren to hatch. Sammy decides to tell the viewers a story about his life and how he made his first encounter with humans. It all started in 1959, at the same beach. Sammy was at the bottom of the nest and was the last to hatch. At that time, the beach was completely deserted and used as a recreation place for humans. Sammy's older siblings had already crawled out of the nest to get to the ocean, so he had to do the same thing as quickly as possible. However, Sammy was unable to get out of the nest, and none of his siblings were around to help him. Instead, they wished him goodbye, saying they may or may not see each other again in 30 years, with Sammy all alone in the nest. He cries out for help, hoping there's still someone around to get him out, but no one was there, and Sammy thinks he won't be able to make it. He was only 5 minutes old. Suddenly, a seagull appears and captures Sammy. Since he was unable to get out of the nest in time with the rest of his siblings, Sammy is carried into the air by the bird, not wanting to be eaten just minutes after being born. He manages to defend himself by spitting in the seagull's eye, which causes it to fly out of control. The bird crashes into another seagull that is holding another hatchling in its beak. This leads to the two birds dropping the turtles, while falling from the sky. Sammy notices a female hatchling falling with him. He immediately becomes smitten with her upon seeing her for the first time. The female hatchling greets him, and they both manage to dodge an incoming seagull while still falling. Eventually, the two manage to land safely on the ground near the sea. Sammy ends up landing very hard onto a raft, while the female hatchling lands safely in a puddle of water. The female hatchling wants to help Sammy down, since he is unable to move because his head is hurt from the landing, but her brother arrives and immediately drags her to the water. Since there are still seagulls flying overhead, Sammy finds out the female hatchling's name is Shelly, as revealed by her brother. But he is unable to move and follow her to the ocean. He loses her in the process, and now he is all alone on the beach. When night falls, Sammy has a nightmare of Shelly coming back for him, only to be eaten by a seagull. After Sammy wakes up from his slumber, the waves start coming in and push the raft he's on into the water. It carries him away while he's still lying on it. However, Sammy, who manages to recover from his injuries, doesn't mind being carried away. He decides that this is the first step of the beginning of his journey. The next morning, Sammy wakes up and walks down the wooden plank of the raft. He looks down into the water and notices a couple of seaweeds sticking to it, so he starts eating the seaweeds for breakfast. Suddenly, he notices 3 older sea turtles on their makeshift raft made of seaweeds floating next to him. The 3 older turtles, Jacko, Ollie, and Sandra, greet Sammy and notice how awfully young he is to be all alone in the current. Ollie and Jacko warn Sammy about the dangers of the ocean, with many predators out to eat him, such as barracudas and sharks. Sandra, who is annoyed by her friend scaring the young hatchling, advises Sammy to go with his instincts and assures him he'll be fine. She tells him there's no reason to be scared before wishing him good luck on his journey. The 3 older turtles begin sailing away, drifting farther from Sammy's sight. Before they are completely out of view, Ollie and Jacko continue to tease and warn him. They tell him to watch out for nets to avoid becoming turtle soup and to eat seaweed instead of plastic floating in the ocean. After Sammy nearly gets bitten by a piranha, when he looks down into the water, he sees a leatherback hatchling being harassed by a bale of loggerhead hatchlings. They want him to get off their seaweed raft to prevent him from eating all their food. Feeling upset that he doesn't fit in with the loggerheads and that they want to get rid of him, the leatherback hatchling dives into the water. He hurts his head when he bumps into Sammy's raft. The leatherback hatchling gets upset with Sammy for supposedly whacking him upside the head. He blames him for giving him a secret passage on his head before diving into the water, leaving Sammy alone again. However, the leatherback hatchling quickly resurfaces and tells Sammy it was just a joke. He says leatherbacks have heads like rocks. The 2 hatchlings introduce themselves. with the leatherback hatchling introducing himself as Ray. They find out they were both born on the same beach and on the same day, just yesterday. This sparks a friendship between the two hatchlings, and they start seeing each other as brothers. Ray is welcomed onto Sammy's raft, and together, the newly formed best friends begin traveling south in the Pacific Ocean. Around 10 years later, Sammy and Ray have almost grown up and start talking about finding mates in the near future. After being persuaded by Ray to tell him what his type is, Sammy reveals how he met Shelley once and thinks she could be his type. He tells Ray the story of how he accidentally rescued Shelley from a seagull when they were only a few minutes old. Ray is very impressed by Sammy's story and cheers him up, saying maybe someday he'll run into Shelley again. He tells him the ocean isn't that big and anything is possible. One night, while Sammy and Ray are at the Tasman Sea, they are unaware that a large ship is being parked a few miles away from their raft. The next morning, Sammy once again dreams about Shelley before Ray wakes him up to show him something he discovered while exploring. Sammy follows Ray into the water, where he meets an octopus named Slim. The two best friends start having fun with Slim by hanging onto his tentacles while the octopus spins around like a carousel, but their fun ends abruptly when the sea creatures notice that the ship from earlier has dumped oil into the ocean. The oil begins to contaminate their surroundings. Sammy and Ray are shocked, as this is the first time they have ever seen oil in the ocean. After saying goodbye to Slim and continuing their journey, they look above the surface and see an oil tanker getting shipwrecked. This causes a large supply of oil to spill into the water. It becomes their first real encounter with humans, though it would not be their last. After leaving the Tasman Sea, Sammy and Ray learn that many things in their journey will change. One big thing is that humans will keep affecting their lives more and more. Sometime later, their raft breaks apart, and now they must swim in the water without a raft to protect them from predators, only a few seconds after the raft collapses. Sammy is accidentally captured by a large fishing net. When Ray tries to rescue him, he gets caught in a different net as well. The two best friends are separated when the nets are pulled up and Ray is carried away by a different ship. Sammy manages to free himself from the net and tries to escape the ship without being seen by any fisherman. However, one fisherman unknowingly traps Sammy between a crate and the wall of the boat while he's trying to escape. A few hours later, Sammy starts to feel exhausted from being on the boat for so long. Eventually, a fisherman finds him. Rather than turning him into turtle soup, the fisherman throws Sammy back into the ocean. But Sammy has been away from water for so long that he sinks straight down to the ocean floor, unable to move. Luckily, a dolphin arrives and manages to revive him just in time. Sammy, still feeling exhausted, swims up and sees a beach nearby, so he reaches the shore and falls asleep. Unbeknownst to him, a group of hippies finds him at night and places him in an enclosure on the beach. The next morning, Sammy wakes up and realizes he is inside the enclosure. A hippie named Snow notices how scared Sammy is, so she leaves to get him some food. She tells him they'll take really good care of him. Once the hippies leave, Sammy finds company in their pet cat, Fluffy, who tells him to escape immediately. Fluffy warns him that the hippies will eat him, but Sammy isn't afraid of them. In fact, he finds them very nice. Snow nurses him back to health by feeding him vegetables. Later, on a rainy day, Sammy listens as Snow reads Around the World in 80 Days to her child. He becomes fascinated by the idea that the human in the story can travel all over the world. It makes Sammy realize there are many oceans in the world, not just his. Until now, he had believed his world was only one small ocean. Sometime later, Snow finds a large female turtle named Vera and brings her into the enclosure. She thinks Sammy and Vera should mate. However, Sammy still has feelings for Shelley, and Vera is far too old for him. The two turtles form only a platonic relationship. On Christmas in 1969, everyone, including Fluffy and the turtles, celebrates the holiday on the beach. As a gift, Snow paints a peace sign on Sammy's shell and calls him their little peace ambassador. At first, Sammy is confused by this, but he begins to like the marking as a symbol of peace. Some more time passes, and Vera is released back into the sea by the hippies when they realize she and Sammy cannot mate. Not long after that, the unauthorized hippies are evicted from the beach by the police. Sammy, not knowing what's going on, gets left behind when Snow and her friends drive away. They only take Fluffy with them. Snow wishes Sammy a good life as she is driven away by one of her friends. Later, Sammy realizes that Fluffy was actually trying to get rid of him out of jealousy. Fluffy had lied, saying the hippies would eat him, just because they cared so much for Sammy. Now Sammy is all alone, with no one left to take care of him. He still thinks they might come back. So he tries to live life alone on the island. He attempts to eat leaves from a tree and even chews on some dollar bills, mistaking them for leaves. He also reads the book Around the World in 80 Days. Eventually, Sammy decides to return to the ocean. There, he encounters Vera again while searching for food. Together, Sammy and Vera run into a female turtle being chased by a shark. Sammy and Vera manage to rescue the female turtle, who turns out to be a grown-up Shelly. Vera leaves the reunited pair alone so they can talk and travel together. As they travel to find food, Sammy asks Shelly if she ever gets bored of drifting and going in circles. He wonders if it would be exciting to travel around the world. He tells her there is much more beyond these waters than they ever thought. He asks if she wants to come with him, and Shelly agrees, since she really likes him. And so, the journey for both Sammy and Shelly begins as they meet several sea creatures along the way in search of the secret passage. Eventually, they travel all the way to the Panama Canal, where they believe the secret passage is located. After bravely protecting themselves from a school of piranhas, a bird captures Sammy and carries him to its nest. In the nest, the bird's chicks are about to eat him. Sammy manages to defend himself from the chicks, but then hears a chainsaw buzzing below. Before the tree falls, he notices a ship nearby heading toward a distant place. Once he safely gets back into the water, Sammy and Shelly follow the ship, believing it leads to the secret passage. Just as they are about to pass through it, they unintentionally get separated at the lock. Sammy blames himself for losing Shelly and feels deeply depressed. He returns to the open ocean and swims past a bale of happy sea turtle couples. While passing by, he meets an elderly turtle couple who happen to have seen Shelly. They tell Sammy that she is heading south to the ice oceans in search of the secret passage. Filled with hope, Sammy follows her trail, determined to find her again. Along the way, he encounters a ship where passengers are tossing junk into the ocean. Sammy gets too close, and two passengers throw down a refrigerator that he climbs onto. He uses the floating fridge as a boat and travels all the way to Antarctica. There, he meets a whale and asks for help. However, the whale accidentally draws attention to a whaling ship nearby. A harpoon is fired, but the whale dodges it. The harpoon hits the refrigerator instead, freezing in the water. Sammy is noticed by a group of Greenpeace workers who rescue him. Sammy, who is recovering from frostbite, is taken by the Greenpeace workers to a lab on their ship. He is placed inside a container in a quiet room. While being moved, he spots Shelly inside a cage. She is also trying to recover from frostbite. Once the ship reaches Monterey, California, Sammy is transported to the Monterey Animal Rescue Center. There, he is placed inside a pen. To his surprise, he reunites with Fluffy, who apologizes for lying to him in the past. Fluffy explains that he was jealous at the time but regrets what he did. He also tells Sammy that Snow and the hippies from the beach now work at the rescue center. Sammy looks out the window and sees workers preparing to release Shelly back into the ocean. Panicked, he wants to get out of the pen immediately to see her. Before Fluffy can open the door, Snow enters the room. She is shocked and happy to see Sammy again after all these years. She comments on how much he has grown since they last saw each other. Snow tells him that she'll have to tag him before he can be released. Soon after, Sammy is returned to the ocean, now wearing a small tag. He continues his search for Shelly, swimming with determination. Along the way, two female leatherbacks ask Sammy for help rescuing a trapped turtle. The turtle is stuck inside a refrigerated trailer. When they arrive, Sammy discovers that the trapped turtle is none other than his old best friend, Ray. Sammy is thrilled and rescues Ray from the trailer. After reuniting, Ray takes Sammy to a shipwreck where they believe Shelly might be. At the shipwreck, Sammy meets Ray's mate, Rita, who tells him that Shelly is nearby, eating seaweed outside the ship. Sammy starts to explore the shipwreck but then spots Shelly outside. However, he sees what appears to be another male turtle flirting with her. This breaks Sammy's heart, and he thinks Shelly might have moved on. Sammy tells Ray and Rita what he saw. Ray tries to comfort Sammy by saying, "There are many other female turtles in the ocean." Then, Rita reveals that the flirty turtle is named Robbie, and he already has a mate named Clara. Robbie just likes flirting with other females. But he's not Shelly's mate. Sammy feels relieved that Shelly is not taken, but he still worries she may not love him anymore. He's unsure if she still has feelings after what happened at the Panama Canal. Ray wants to help and comes up with a plan for a dramatic reunion. With the help of someone named Albert, they stage a rescue. While Shelly is eating seaweed near the shipwreck, a shark arrives and chases her. Sammy appears at just the right time and rescues her from the shark. The shark turns out to be Albert, a toothless friend helping with the plan. Shelly is not upset by the fake rescue and is happy to be reunited with Sammy. Even after the Panama separation, their bond remains strong. The two turtles get married at the shipwreck, surrounded by friends and sea creatures. After the ceremony, they swim away together to continue their journey around the world. Now in present day, 2009, Sammy and Ray are both grandfathers to their own grandchildren. They watch Sammy's newborn grandkids cross the beach from their nest, heading toward the water. Sammy and Ray plan to meet their wives at Tristan da Cunha after all the babies make it to the sea. Just then, Sammy hears his youngest grandson crying for help back at the nest. He crawls over and sees the little one struggling to get out. Knowing exactly how his grandson feels, being the last to hatch and stuck, Sammy helps him out of the nest. He watches proudly as his grandson follows his siblings into the ocean. Before they leave, Sammy gently urges the hatchling to begin his own journey.